Right. Good morning, everyone, dear conference guests. And thank you for the great honor to give this keynote address in this conference, and for the conference organizers to organize everything they have done for this conference. And thank you everyone who is here for joining the conference. It is great to see so many of you here. And the theme of this year's conference is indeed extremisms. Since we have found our way here, we all have most likely some kind of relationship with the word. It is also likely that we understand it in different ways, and we have different stories about how we ended up using the term and also what exactly we study under extremism. Well, my own story with this is that I started as a researcher of terrorism and political violence a bit before 9/11, but I became a researcher of extremism later without actually changing the research topic. About 10 years ago, many Western states decided to start preferring the term violent extremism over terrorism, and academic research then followed the suit soon afterwards, and especially in the Nordic countries, violent extremism has become really the prevalent term. The reason for this change was that extremism seemed like a more neutral and better defined term. This may sound hilarious for anyone who has read literature on extremism. The name of the conference is Extremisms in plural for a very good reason. You do not have to read many articles on extremism to understand that researchers have significantly different takes on what extremism is. A good way to highlight some of these key differences in approaches to extremism is to start from the American civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. that Katalin already mentioned, and his well-known statement about extremism. In one of his letters, he wrote that the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists. Will we be extremists for the preservation of justice or for the extension, for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? Well, some researchers will find this statement confusing and contradictory. These researchers likely follow a well-established tradition in Western political thought to link extremism to anti-democratic and anti-pluralist views. From this perspective, an extremist that strives for the extension of that does not work towards extending justice and instead for prevailing injustice simply doesn't compute. We can call this value-based understanding of extremism. Well, other researchers then say rather that, hey, this is what I have tried to explain to you all along. We do not have to link extremism to any particular values or form of government. It is simply behavior that aims to fundamentally alter the dominant political system. It does not matter what exactly you fight for. What matters is that you seek to disrupt and change the political system. We will call this relative understanding of extremism, and from this perspective, what Martin Luther King Jr. said makes complete sense. Then there are researchers who are likely to say that, oh, I see what he might try to do here. These researchers are mainly interested in how the term extremism is used in political discourse. We can call this discursive understanding of extremism. Extremism has long had a negative connotation in the public debate, and it has been used mainly of views and actors who one does not like and does not support. Martin Luther King's statement can be read against this background. It is actually part of his response to allegations that he is an extremist. It is his defense of his actions. After first resisting the label, he decides to own it and redefine it. And he has not been the only one making this kind of discursive move either. Well, whichever approach we take to the term extremism, one thing is for certain, and that is that we cannot escape the fact that we as researchers exist in a context. Political uses of the term extremism are not just our research topic, but it's part of the context in which we do research. This has been true for all times, or, well, technically maybe not all times, and maybe not from the 15th century England onwards, but at least from the start of the 20th century to some degree, when extremism became an integral part of political vocabulary in Europe. But our times of political turmoil and change are not exactly the easiest ones to navigate for researchers of extremism. Well, let's say that you study a party that holds anti-democratic views that are in tension with human rights. It was a small party first, but then that party wins the election and becomes the main governing party of your country. It is clearly an extremist party according to your understanding of extremism that you use in your research. But what kind of implications will it have for you as a researcher if you publicly call that party extremist, even if you explain very hard that you use the word in a descriptive way, following a long-established approach in academic research? Or let's say that you find academically more consistent to approach extremism as a relative term. You use a term in your study about pro-democratic movements in authoritarian states. One day you stumble on YouTube to a video where a high-ranking politician cites your work to prove that according to research, the opposing pro-democratic movement is extremist and does so to justify countermeasures against it. What should you think about that? Should this kind of possibility affect your decision about who to call extremist in your research and whether to even use that term in the first place? And what should researchers think about the naming game in general? Do we have a role to play there? It's not uncommon that researchers are asked to act as arbiters of one kind. As a researcher with a long history with the term terrorism, this is very familiar to me. I have been asked several times whether a certain act or an act is terrorist, as if science can solve that question. I can surely share my own view as a researcher, but does that take anyone any closer into settling the dispute? Can researchers participate in the who is an extremist debate without becoming a party in it? And does it matter if they become a party? Finally, academic researchers are nowadays encouraged to engage in societal interaction and share their research results and expertise with the society. Well, what does that mean then if you are a researcher of extremism? During the last 20 years, a new policy field has developed, especially in Western Europe, that is called Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism. The objective is to develop policies and practices that limit the number of people who radicalize into violent extremism. How and when should academic researchers support such policies and practices? This has been a long-standing question in the study of terrorism and violent extremism. Well, I lead a Radia Knowledge Center that seeks to support such policies and practices with academic knowledge and capacity building in Finland. So we think we have found an ethically sustainable way to do that work in today's Finland. But what if the government you are supposed to cooperate with has decided to regard non-violent demonstrations as extremism or develop policies against it? What do you do then? That may be a good moment for researchers to remind themselves that societal interaction and engagement that is asked from us has the word societal in it. There are many other ways that academic researchers can work for the benefit of society. It does not necessarily have to involve cooperating with the state. I have kept listing questions and dilemmas for quite a while now, but these are just some of the many difficult situations that researchers of extremism may encounter nowadays, and I'm sure that many people in this room can list many more in a heartbeat. They may be really hard to manage, but I think they are also all very important and pertinent questions for us to think and, most of all, talk about between ourselves. This is because, if we paraphrase Martin Luther King Jr.'s statement, the question is not whether and how we will research extremism, or what kind of approach we use. It is clear that extremism is such an integral part of political life in today's Europe that it cannot be ignored in academic research. It needs to be studied using various methods and approaches, and we need to engage with the concept as well. The question is rather, or the more prevalent question from this perspective is what kind of extremism researchers we will be. What do we stand for, and what kind of ethical commitments we have as academic researchers? How do we position ourselves in today's political situation and in relation to political power? Well, I'm certain that these 3 days that we are starting now will give us a great opportunity to reflect and think on about these questions together. And then at the end, we will go home productively enlightened and confused. And I look forward to getting increasingly confused and enlightened together with you during the next 3 days and hear more about your research and your thoughts on these matters. Thank you very much.